Jackson Smith-Njigba now is in 8th place all-time in NFL history for most receiving yards in a single season with 1,793 yards. Ooh. NFL Top 10's for Sunday. This is a special edition. I wanted to get this out on Sunday after those two games that we watched on Saturday. Hopefully you got the chance to watch them. Neither one was particularly thrilling, I guess, unless you're a fan of the particular teams that won. But they were, very pivotal games going into the playoffs. So they were fun to watch in that manner. And so I wanted to get them out because there's a lot of stats that came out through that game. As we wrap up the season, there's a lot of players who finished in the top 10, whether on their team or the NFL, or actually at the very top of the top 10 of their team, for example. So I wanted to look at that, look at the games real quick, and then we'll move on Monday. I'll cover the Sunday games, or start to anyway. But I want to get this special edition out on Sunday just to get those two games that were yesterday out for you to hear about. So with that, let's get started. So we'll start with the 4:30 game, which was the Carolina Panthers versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. Carolina lost this game 16-14. It was very close. There was a lot of rain, so that could have had an effect on some of the play. It was just a close game all the way around. Here's the stat to me that is the key to Carolina not being able to win this game. Third down efficiency for Carolina, 1 out of 8 for 12%. They did go for it on fourth down twice and made it, but 1 out of 8 on third down versus 8 out of 15 third down conversions for Tampa Bay. That's 53%. Much better there. And the other negative factor for Carolina was time of possession. Tampa Bay had the ball for almost 37 and a half minutes to 22 and a half minutes for Carolina. Big difference there as well. Time of possession and the inability of Carolina to convert on third downs were two key factors. Both of these quarterbacks were really close, actually, in their stats. Bryce Young, 24 completions on 35 attempts for 266 yards, 7.6 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns. He had 1 interception, was not sacked in this game, had a quarterback rating of 98. Now, Baker Mayfield only threw the ball 22 times, had 16 completions, 203 yards, total yards passing. That's a 9.2 yards per attempt. So better there on the yards per attempt. Did have a touchdown. He also threw an interception, and he was sacked 2 times. He had a quarterback rating of 97.3. So very, very close on the quarterback ratings. Another negative factor for Carolina in the running game. They ran the ball 14 times in this game, total 14 carries for 19 yards. That's it. Rico Dowdle, 7 carries, 10 yards. Chuba Hubbard, 5 carries, 10 yards. And Bryce Young, 2 carries, -1. That's it. No running game. And, they're not out of this game. I don't know why they didn't make more of an effort. Now, at halftime was 13-7 Tampa Bay. And nothing happened in the third quarter at all. Fourth quarter, Carolina finally gets another touchdown but Tampa Bay also had a field goal, so they ended up 16-14. Tampa Bay just couldn't overcome that lead, but still, you would think that they could have stuck to that running game a little bit more, but they didn't. They relied on Bryce Young. He did okay, but not enough to win. Now, for Tampa Bay, not that they ran the ball great, but they did definitely run it. 42 carries for them. 42 carries for them, 14 for Carolina. 42 carries for Tampa Bay, 140 yards. That's 3.33 yards a carry. Bucky Irving, 26 carries for 85 yards. So only 3.27 yards a carry, but they did run it. And made that push to continually run the ball, and I think it paid off for him. Now, in the receiving department for Carolina, Jalen Coker had 6 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown. He had the most receptions, most targets, but Tedrow McMillan had 4 catches for 85 yards to lead the team in yards. That was on 6 targets. No one else had more than 3 catches. Rico Dowdle had 2 catches for 20 yards, plus the 10 yards he had running. He had 30 yards total in this game. Not good. Tampa Bay, Cade Otton had 7 catches in this game for 94 yards. Now, you remember Baker Mayfield only threw for 203 yards, so Cade Otton had 94 of them. He had the touchdown reception as well. He was targeted 9 times in this game, Cade Otton. No one else had more than 2 receptions, and no one else was targeted more than 3 times. Mike Evans, 2 for 34. Chris Godwin, 1 for 8. I mean, wow. Emeka Egbuka, 1 for 8. So and it might have had something to do with the rain, and he just kept the passes to Cade Otton coming, as a tight end, a little closer in maybe. I don't know. But yeah. And maybe it was just good coverage by Carolina on everybody else. They left Cade Otton obviously much more open than anybody, and Baker Mayfield took advantage of that. So this game, very, very close. Not as impressive as you'd like to see Tampa Bay, but they finally did win the game they needed to win. The only problem now for them is because Atlanta last week beat the Rams, there's a chance that Tampa Bay still does not win the division. So they're going to have to wait and watch the game and hope that Atlanta loses the New Orleans Saints. Otherwise, Carolina's in this into the playoffs with an 8-9 record. So you'd have 3 teams. If Atlanta wins, Carolina Panthers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Atlanta Falcons will all be 8-9. But because of tiebreaker issues, Carolina Panthers will go to the playoffs with a losing record. Not good, but you know what? I still believe in winning your division is important. And if you win your division, you should go to the playoffs. I don't think you should miss out just because. And I still think you get the home game too. That's just me. It might be traditional, but it just makes the divisions important. And I think we need to keep it that way. All right, let's look at some numbers in this game. First of all, Bryce Young on the season now. He had 2 touchdowns in this game, so he now has 23 touchdowns, which is good enough to put him to 7th all-time in passing touchdowns in a season for the Carolina Panthers. 7th overall in that category. He also, on his career, now with those 2 touchdowns, has 49, which puts him into 4th all-time for the Carolina Panthers in passing touchdowns. So he moved up to 4th in that category, passing Kerry Collins. Cam Newton holds the record with 186. That's a long way away. Now for Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the season, passing touchdowns, Baker Mayfield had 1. He was tied with Tom Brady and Josh Freeman for 9th all-time. So now with 1 more, he's got 26 passing touchdowns in a single season, which is good enough for tie for 8th in that category. Last year, though, you got to remember Baker Mayfield had 41 touchdown passes. And you knew there would be a regression. It didn't look like it early on in the season, but this second half of the season's been miserable for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and somewhat surprising too. And I don't know what it is. Baker Mayfield's been hurt some, but he did a lot of running around and held the team together yesterday. Now for Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the season, excuse me, Vita Vea had one more tackle for loss. He now has 48, which puts him in a tie for 8th all-time in tackles for loss for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with 48. So that ties him with Shaquille Barrett, who played with the team. He was on the team last year. In 2024, he was his last year with the team. Now, moving on to the game between the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. This game, again, you're a fan of the teams, was a kind of a slow-moving game in a way. It was only 13-3. And in fact, most of the scoring was in the first half where Seattle was ahead 10-3, and they ended up with a field goal in the fourth quarter. That's all the scoring in this game. It was a very low-scoring game. And in one sense, that's quite surprising, to be honest with you, because it appeared to me that Seattle had this game all the way. I mean, it seemed like the 49ers could do nothing almost against the Seattle, whether it was on offense, defense. They were having the hardest time any which way you looked at it. And when you look at the numbers, that's what I'm saying. The fact that Seattle only had 13 points is amazing. In this game for Seattle, first downs, 23 first downs to San Francisco 9. Huge difference there. Net yards, 361 for Seattle, 173 for San Francisco. In the running game, San Francisco could just do nothing. They had 53 yards rushing, while Seattle had 180. And then in passing, 181 net yards here for Seattle and 120 net yards for San Francisco. Brock Purdy was only sacked 3 times, but he was pressured immensely. So in this game, let me look at this. A couple other stats here. Third down conversions, which I like to look at. Now, Seattle wasn't great, 6 out of 13, 46%. And they did not make the 1 fourth down try they tried. This is probably one of the reasons the game was close at all. For San Francisco, 2 out of 9 on third down for 22%. Fourth down, they went for it twice, didn't make it either time. Big key there. Aim in possession. Seattle had the ball for almost 38 minutes to 22, a little over 22 for San Francisco. So they dominated that in that as well. They dominated everywhere in this game, Seattle did. And as I said, the fact that they only had 13 points is amazing. There was a couple of plays in this game that were big turning points. The biggest one was the one time that San Francisco actually was able to move down the field trying to get a touchdown to get into this game again. They were down by 10 points. Seattle pressures Brock Purdy quite heavily, forces a bad throw. The ball's tipped by a Seattle defender. McCaffrey can't quite turn around to catch it. It hits his hands, and the defender behind McCaffrey catches it for an interception at the 2 or 3 yard line, right near the end zone. That is the closest that the 49ers came to scoring a touchdown. And if they had scored it, obviously it might have been a different game, but that was it. After that, they just couldn't do anything. This was all really Seattle's defense was very impressive in this game. Now in the passing department for Seattle, Sam Darnold, 20 completions on 26 attempts, 198 yards. So, kind of maintaining the game in a way. 7.6 yards an attempt, no touchdowns, no interceptions, sacked twice. Had a quarterback rating of 97.9. That's pretty good. Brock Purdy, on the other hand, 1 less completion on 1 more attempt. He had 19 completions on 27 attempts for 127 yards. That's it. Only 4.7 yards per attempt. No touchdowns. Did throw an interception, which is that one that I just mentioned. Sacked 3 times and ended up with a quarterback rating of 64.9. I mean, he gave it his best effort, but they couldn't stop the Seattle defense. It just seemed to be swarming all the time. Let's look at the running game here. Kenneth Walker, he looked good again. I kind of really love to watch how he runs. I'm just surprised sometimes how um, he just has some games where I don't know what happens, but he doesn't really show up, or they don't go to him, and his numbers don't look good at all. But when you watch him run, sometimes he's got some impressive cuts and moves. He's very fun to watch. He had 16 carries for 97 yards. That's over 6 yards a carry. And then Zach Charbonnet had 17 carries for 74 yards, 4.35 yards a carry. He had a touchdown as well. So obviously, San Francisco could not stop the running game of Seattle. And why not? They ran it 39 times, including Sam Darnold 6 times. 39 carries for 180 yards, 4.6 yards a carry. So you might as well run it. Now, San Francisco, the numbers overall, 12 carries, only 12 rushes in this game for San Francisco for 53 yards. That's 4.4 yards a carry. But that's because Brock Purdy had 2 carries for 21 yards, which accounted for the average being so high. On the other hand, Christian McCaffrey, 8 carries, 23 yards, 2.88 yards a carry, basically 2.9 yards a carry for him. Not good at all. Longest carry for him was 5 yards. Brian Robinson, 2 carries for 9 yards. That's all he had. In the receiving game, Jackson Smith-Njigba led the team with 6 catches for 84 yards. Nobody had a touchdown reception, though. Kenneth Walker, 4 receptions for 36 yards. So he ended up with a total of 133 yards of offense, which is very good. Zach Charbonnet, 3 catches, 23 yards. So he had 107 yards himself. So the 2 running backs had over 100 yards from the line of scrimmage each. So that's really impressive. And as I said, 49ers really just couldn't do anything with running backs, just couldn't stop it, which really helps out the passing game when, they're trying to get the people down on the line to stop the runs, and they're not doing it. And so anytime that Sam Darnold wanted to throw the ball, he really had a pretty decent opportunity. All right, now this game had a lot of big numbers in it. For Seattle, Sam Darnold now has 3,703 yards. That's what he finished this season in passing yards. That was good enough for 9th place all time in passing yards in a single season for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, looking at the star of the Seattle Seahawks, Jackson Smith-Njigba, he ended the season with 119 receptions, which is the number 1 spot all time in Seattle Seahawks history. So this season, Jackson Smith-Njigba had 1,793 yards receiving, which is number 1 all time in Seattle Seahawks history. He had already broke the record that was held by DK Metcalf of only 1,303 yards. So he's crushed that record many weeks ago. So Jackson Smith-Njigba now is in 8th place all time in NFL history for most receiving yards in a single season with 1,793 yards. Very impressive. So next up, looking at the kicker, Jason Myers. Now, he didn't have a great game. He made only 2 out of 4 field goals. And that's another reason this game was closer than it really was. Jason Myers ended the season with 171 total points, which is good enough for 3rd all-time in NFL history and good enough for 1st all-time for the Seattle Seahawks. For the Seattle Seahawks, he passed Sean Alexander, who held the record in 2005 with 168 points. So now he has the number 1 all-time total points for Seattle Seahawks, and he's 3rd all-time in NFL history in total points in a single season with that 171. So Kenneth Walker now, looking at his career numbers for rushing yards, at the end of this season now he has 3,458 yards, which is good enough to put him into 9th all-time in rushing yards for the Seattle Seahawks. All right, now let's look at San Francisco 49ers. This is pretty much just Christian McCaffrey. We did have Kittle as well, but Christian McCaffrey, not that it was a good game for him. He did have 6 catches, but only for 34 yards. But the 6 catches moved him into 4th all-time in San Francisco's history for receptions in a single season with 102. The only person ahead of him is Jerry Rice, who holds the top 3 spots, the top being 100. Now, also, with 102 receptions, Christian McCaffrey, as far as running backs go in NFL history, now moves into a tie for 4th with Matt Forte with 102 receptions in a single season, which is the 4th best all-time NFL for running backs. Now, looking at yards, receiving yards by running backs, Christian McCaffrey only had 34 yards, but that was good enough to put him into 9th all-time most receiving yards by a running back in a single season with 924, past Ronnie Harmon and Marshall Faulk. All right, now let's look at George Kittle. George Kittle finally, last game of the season, he had 5 receptions in this game, which is good enough to move him into 2nd all-time in receptions in his career with the San Francisco 49ers with 595 receptions. He passed Terrell Owens, who had 592. Jerry Rice, which George Kittle will never catch, has 1,281 receptions in his career with the 49ers. You wonder how many receptions George Kittle would have if he wasn't hurt as often as he is. I'm not going to do it, but I'm curious as to how many seasons George Kittle's played every game or most of the games, like missing maybe one. He plays a very tough game, and tight ends take a lot of beatings sometimes, but still he's great tight end, one of the best, and now he's 2nd all-time in receptions for the San Francisco 49ers with 595. So congratulations to him. Though, as I said, when you lose a game, you don't feel too happy about any kind of stat that looks good in the future to look good looking back, but right now it doesn't impress you. All right, that's a look at this game, these 2 games that were played on Saturday. I just wanted to get this out. Obviously, Sunday morning is not my best time to do a podcast, but I did it anyway. So I will be back on Monday looking at some of the games from Sunday. So appreciate you listening. You can like and subscribe on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. Also subscribe and listen on other places such as Apple, Spotify, or wherever you might listen. Please leave a comment. I appreciate the comments, even negative ones. Negative ones are great if they have any suggestions. I don't mind suggestions to improve the podcast. Appreciate that. And of course, those who do give me positive feedback, I love that as well. And thanks for that. All right. So for NFL top 10s for Sunday, I'm out. See you on Monday.